New documents detail what may have happened in the moments leading up to the stabbing death of a Frisco ISD student, Austin Metcalf. It comes as the community continues to really process what all happened.
You know, there's certain stories that just shake your faith in humanity, and this Karmelo Anthony killing of Austin Metcalf story is exactly one of those cases. As more and more evidence ends up coming out, we get a clearer and clearer picture of this obvious homicide, this obvious murder, this obvious not self-defense case, and yet what we see time and time again on social media is a bunch of deliberately crafted fake social media posts in order to get engagement and reel people into the idea that Karmelo Anthony is actually the real victim, that Texas law somehow protects this 17-year-old kid from bringing a knife into a school area, picking a fight with a white kid, and stabbing him in the heart. And everybody who disagrees is just an evil white racist. In fact, this campaign is so successful that Karmelo Anthony has raised on GiveSendGo at the time of me recording this video nearly $250,000 in funds in order to allegedly pay for his defense at the criminal trial, but will likely be compensation for members of his family in this particular case. Now, we're going to break this down. We're going to break down all the lies and then go over the police report and expose how the lies being put forward aren't even alleged by Karmelo Anthony in said police report. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
I've already done a couple of videos on this particular story. My previous video focused on a viral, horribly written, defamatory, and fake Facebook post that, of course, was purported to be from the Frisco PD police chief. However, the defamation has continued. It's gotten significantly worse. And me saying that Austin Metcalf's killer was able to raise nearly $250,000 for his defense fund on GiveSendGo does not speak to the truth of the matter. The fact is, this guy, Karmelo Anthony, had multiple different fundraisers via GoFundMe prior to the GiveSendGo fundraiser, and a bunch of them reached into the tens of thousands of dollars before GoFundMe actually enforced the same terms of service violation that they enforced against Kyle Rittenhouse against Karmelo Anthony. And the crazy thing about this is that the original fundraiser, I believe, was started by a parody account on Twitter, Reverend Racist Man. You guys get where I'm going with this. And that fundraiser itself also raised tens of thousands of dollars on GoFundMe prior to its cancellation, prior to GoFundMe shutting it down. So these people are not deterred. They want to give a bunch of money to Karmelo Anthony, and the reason why is some of them believe in the misinformation that this is an innocent Beba Angel black kid that is being railroaded by an evil white racist system, but a lot of them just like the idea of a white kid who had his whole future ahead of him being killed by Karmelo Anthony, a black kid who has a history of violence.
While here at Centennial, students shocked about what happened, that one of their classmates could be charged with such a serious offense. One girl that we spoke with knew Anthony pretty well, that she says, and told us this.
I'm in shock because it's like, I wouldn't expect that from him. I only know him fighting and stuff, like, you know, but to take someone's life is just like a different level.
They think it's funny. They think it's hilarious. They think it's some kind of racial revenge against the whites, a la the O.J. Simpson jury that quite literally knew he was guilty of murder and voted not guilty anyway for revenge against Rodney King.
Do you think that they're members of the jury that voted to acquit O.J. because of Rodney King?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
How many of you think felt that way?
Oh, probably 90% of us.
90%? Did you feel that way?
Yes.
That was payback.
Uh-huh.
You think that's right?
And it's the kind of story that just shakes your faith in humanity, shakes your faith in the idea that we can have a unified country. But I want to make something 100% clear to all of you in my audience, which is in my previous video and in the video prior to that, I got a bunch of different comments from people purporting to be black Americans that are absolutely disgusted with this situation. Normal, regular, non-activist, non-misinformed black people, for the most part, are not on the side of the murderer in this particular case. And I do think think that is quite notable because I don't want people to smear black people as a whole in this country when plenty of black people in this nation have a sound moral philosophy that guides them in these particular cases, and they understand that this is not a legitimate form of self-defense. Also, again, the people who are misinformed by all this campaign in order to deliberately misinform them, I don't blame them 100%. We've seen this phenomenon before when it comes to Black Lives Matter cases, so I'm not surprised that the propaganda within the community is so strong. So again, give the people a little bit of a break. However, let's be clear, there are definitely bad actors that absolutely love this. They think it's funny, they celebrate this, and they excuse this based on a past of evil white racism. Somebody has brought to my attention this video from Amazing Lucas, where again, he quite literally laughs at the death of Austin Metcalf and then blames post-traumatic slave syndrome for Karmelo Anthony's actions.
That's what seems to be this story, is that this kid came out in self-defense, and you had one incident where it says, hey, touch me again or come at me again and see what happens. Now, what happens? The kid, the high IQ, this is what they want to say, according to the racists, the high IQ, pattern recognizer, per capita elitist, what does he do? He goes and touches the kid again. And sure enough, this is the ultimate, from what it seems, the FAFO. Like, that's not just being in this country. That's not how we're trained. And this is a partly due to post-traumatic slave syndrome, a book that I recommend you all read. But yeah, that's not going to happen. But there has to be a certain level of privilege, like I said, post-traumatic slave master syndrome, that would somehow trigger in your brain to see, well, what is he going to do? What are you going to do to me, huh? I'm the master. And that's where that privilege comes from. And sure enough, he found out that, this privilege doesn't really, protect you from, knives. I don't know what to tell you. It doesn't protect you from knives.
Let us be clear about this. These are the people that are on the wrong side of this issue. These are the people that are backing the killer. These are the people that are knowingly or stupidly, I can't tell which with Amazing Lucas and half of these people, repeating dumbass talking points that have no basis in reality. And by the way, allegedly, a member of Karmelo Anthony's family is also putting forward absolute lies related to this particular case in order to help defend him. And I just want to highlight one of the posts that, of course, was covered by the local news. They definitely had to report on this side of the story, and I want to juxtapose that to what Karmelo Anthony himself said in the police report.
A relative of a Frisco teenager took to Facebook to defend him Friday. Kevin Hayes wrote that Karmelo Anthony defended himself against violent aggressors in a now viral Facebook post. He calls the victim and his twin brother bullies and claims they tried to take his belongings, broke his phone, and stomped on it.
So yeah, this is from Kevin Hayes, who purports to be a relative of Karmelo Anthony, and he says the truth about Karmelo. Let's set the record straight. Enough with the misinformation, and let's talk about facts. First and foremost, it says it's normal, all caps, for students from different schools to gather under another school's tent. Karmelo had friends there, and he wasn't trespassing or looking for trouble. 2, the claim that one of the twins had never seen Karmelo before, a blatant lie. 3, no student has the right to remove another student from a school-owned, in all caps, tent. The school owns the tent, not the twins. 4, Karmelo is a track athlete. The twins are not. He wasn't even expecting to see them there. Now, I've actually seen it disputed on whether or not Karmelo was a track athlete or not. Some people had reported that he was skipping school in order to be there, but let us be clear about this. We don't know. It's speculative at the time, and unfortunately, in response to the lies and disinformation put out by these black activists that, again, are celebrating the murder, or in this case, a family member trying to shield his family member, we don't have the truth at this moment in time, but again, we will discover the truth later. But let us get into the heavy allegations being put forward by this individual. Now, here's what they don't want you to know. The twins didn't just ask him to leave, they tried to jump him. Before attacking him, they tried to take his belongings, broke his phone in all caps, and stomped on it. The twins are known bullies, all caps. So ask yourself, if two 200-plus pound attackers came at your child, what would you expect them to do? And yet, despite everything, the media is trying to destroy Karmelo's name. They keep posting pictures of him with an airsoft gun, not even a real firearm, to manipulate public perception. Why? Because they want to paint him as a criminal instead of a victim. Now, he goes on to say that Karmelo has a 4.0 GPA and all these other different different various things, but let us get to the heart of the allegations that are often repeated by a bunch of people that are trying to make the case from Karmelo Anthony, which is, of course, that the twins, as a pair, were trying to jump Karmelo Anthony. And, of course, by the way, these were known bullies that knew of Karmelo before, and Karmelo didn't even know that these two bullies were going to be there who he had issues with in the past. So first, and this should be obvious, if Karmelo knew these people, if he had previous issues with them, and then he's carrying a knife on him and then sits under the tent, that makes it worse for Karmelo Anthony. Remember, according to the witnesses, which we will review again, Karmelo pulled the knife out of his bag prior to any physical altercation. So you have somebody who allegedly, according to the relative, has a history of being bullied by these two individuals. He ends up sitting in their particular area. He is noticed by those individuals, and then he immediately pulls out a knife, again in a concealed way, and says, "Touch me and see what happens. Punch me and see what happens," according to another witness, and then he stabs one of these twins to death. That is premeditated murder. This absolute idiotic relative right here is just provided the motivation, if true, for Karmelo Anthony to be convicted of an unambiguous first-degree murder charge. Let's be clear about that. But the thing is, this all appears to be false.
An argument over where Anthony was sitting while the meet experienced a rain delay sparked a confrontation between the teen and Metcalf. According to arrest paperwork, Anthony sitting underneath Metcalf's team tent. You could see it from the air when we flew over the crime scene. Metcalf from Memorial High, Anthony from Centennial. A witness telling police Metcalf told Anthony to move from under the team's tent because he didn't go to their school. The witness telling police Anthony grabbed his bag, opened it, and reached inside and proceeded to tell Austin, "Touch me and see what happens." Investigators writing that Metcalf grabbed Anthony to tell him to move and that Anthony pulled out a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away.
I have yet to find a single source outside of this relative right here that establishes a pre-existing relationship between the Metcalfs and between Karmelo Anthony. In addition to that, no witness, zero witness in the police report establishes that the second brother was involved or that the phone was broken. And by the way, when I'm saying no witness establishes that, I'm including Karmelo Anthony. Again, his statements in the police report talk about him engaging with one individual who, by the way, he does not name because he likely does not know him. And he talks about one person touching him. And even with his claims of self-defense, in nowhere in there do we hear about anything related to they broke my phone, they broke my stuff, or anything of the sort. Again, go to the police report. It's only 7 pages. There was a chain link fence that separated me from the suspect. I gave the suspect instructions to keep his hands in the air. During the time the suspect said verbally out loud, I was protecting myself. It should be noted that I had not questioned him about the incident when he made that comment. I asked him if he had any weapons. He said no. I patted him down for weapons. While we were walking along the fence, I did not locate any on his person. I instructed the male to continue walking along the fence, which he complied, towards an area where there was an opening in the fence that led off the track. While walking him off the track, the suspect said, quote, "He put his hands on me." Then I detained the suspect in handcuffs, handcuffed behind his back, and sat him down on the ground. Officer A. Rissi arrived at the scene at the time. I conducted another pat down, and then I searched the person after he gave consent. This is where that iconic quote comes from, by the way, where he advised that he had the alleged suspect, and then the suspect, being Karmelo Anthony, said, quote, "I'm not alleged, I did it." Now we have from another officer, as we were walking to the squad car, the suspect was emotional, and he said, quote, "He put his hands on me, I told him not to." I did not question the suspect about the incident while he was escorted to the patrol vehicle. I searched this person again and had him sit in the backseat driver's side of the patrol car of the vehicle. They give the number right there. While the suspect was in the backseat, I noticed fresh blood on his middle finger. I verbally acknowledged that I saw the blood out loud so that it would be captured on my body-worn camera. It should be noted that the suspect asked me, quote, "Is he going to be okay?" while he was in the backseat. Now, it is important to understand that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but nowhere in any of Karmelo Anthony's spontaneous utterances do we hear him say they destroyed my stuff or anything of the sort, or that there was multiple attackers. And by the by the way, none of the witnesses that were present, and there's 30 of them, actually said that both brothers were attacking him. We had nothing from the second brother in his version of the story. In fact, people have had to pathetically cut down his 15-minute interview to about 6 seconds to imply that he was involved in the encounter, which is absurd in every possible way, because there's no evidence at all whatsoever that Hunter Metcalf, Austin Metcalf's brother, was involved in the physical altercation. Now, also notable, and why I decided to read that portion of the police report, is that, of course, Karmelo Anthony did not have the knife on him at the time that the police conducted a search on his person. And the reason for that, we discover later in the police report, which, by the way, is conveniently left out of the overwhelming majority of the reporting, even though these people had access to this report prior to it being released to the public, is because Karmelo Anthony threw the knife in the bleachers. Another witness came forward in order to tell the police that. That witness directed the police to the knife, and guess what? They found it. And by the way, if you don't believe me about all the different various witnesses, they are actually listed at the bottom of this particular police report. The names are blacked out, but what you can see is that you have multiple witnesses to Karmelo Anthony's actions from a bunch of different schools. So the idea that they're all gonna lie based on evil white racism on behalf of Austin Metcalf is completely absurd. But remember, these people don't care about the facts. A white kid who had his whole future ahead of him was killed, and they take joy in that. Again, picture Amazing Lucas laughing about it and talking about how he's the victim of post-traumatic slave syndrome.
What does he do? He goes and touches the kid again. And sure enough, this is the ultimate, from what it seems, the FAFO. Like, that's not just being in this country. That's not how we're trained. And this is a partly due to post-traumatic slave syndrome, a book that I recommend y'all read.
Now again, this should be obvious. Every single reputable source reports this version of events, where there's not a jumping, there's not a group thing, nobody's talking about the phone being smashed or anything of the sort, and we have multiple different spontaneous utterances from Karmelo Anthony, where he doesn't mention that he was attacked by multiple attackers, nor does he mention that his phone was destroyed, nor does he mention that these were long-term bullies of him that were just so evil, white, and racist, they teleported everywhere that he was going to be, and oh my god, the evil, white racism is just too much. All of the information about the phone being destroyed or both twins being involved in the attack comes from what appears to be two different sources. You have random people on social media, like the author of that fake police chief Facebook post that we broke down in great detail on a previous video, and this alleged relative. Again, these people are faking autopsy reports in relation to the Austin Metcalf case, saying, oh look, he had Molly in his system, so he was high on drugs at the time, therefore, somehow his cause of death was not a stab wound. This is all about racial revenge for a bunch of these people, and it's absolutely disgusting. And by the way, I wouldn't even pay attention all that much to the authors of these particular posts, because there's definitely trolls involved. There's definitely people who are trying to gin up racial division, but what I would pay attention to is the reaction to the post, the support that they're getting, all these different people that are going out of their way to praise Karmelo Anthony, not because they think he's innocent, but because they know he's guilty and they like the fact that he killed a white kid. And I find it kind of crazy that the self-defense claims are all from these unrelated sources. They're not backed up by any kind of reality. Karmelo Anthony obviously said that. That's the only person connected to this, but all this additional information about the jumping and the bullying and all that other stuff, that's not coming from him. It's coming from outside sources, and yet each and every one of the local news segments that came out about this day seem to have a self-defense expert to tell the dumbasses out there in the audience that no, this is obviously not covered by self-defense.
He says he told Austin, touch me and see what happens.
One of the prohibitions in self-defense is the person claiming self-defense cannot provoke the incident and then claim self-defense when they act.
The warrant says a short time later, Austin grabbed Anthony to tell him to move, and Anthony pulled a knife from his bag and stabbed Metcalf once in the chest.
Anytime the alleged victim does not have a weapon, that makes it difficult, not impossible, but difficult for the suspect to claim self-defense.
The young man who died having a deadly weapon or threatening to do serious harm to this kid, then he has no business using a knife. And so there will be no self-defense claim that he could really urge.
So again, I just showed you two different clips of two different attorneys breaking down two different ways that Karmelo Anthony's self-defense claims completely fall apart. The first one is pretty damn obvious. You cannot provoke a fight, which, by the way, the overwhelming evidence right now shows that that's exactly what Karmelo Anthony did, and then claim stand your ground or self-defense, which, by the way, the stand your ground law is being greatly misinterpreted in terms of the people even invoking it in this situation. But whatever, we're just going to stay with standard self-defense at this moment in time, because that's not how it works. Just like you can't invite somebody over to your home, shoot and kill them, and then claim the castle doctrine. That is obviously not how that works. You have to be an absolute idiot to believe that's how it works. But even if Karmelo Anthony didn't provoke the altercation, it's important to understand that you cannot escalate a regular, ordinary fist fight without a reasonable fear of deadly force or serious bodily injury into a deadly force altercation. So yeah, this is clear and obvious as of right now. Now, of course, new information could come out in the future that could change that. Let us be fair about that. That is always a possibility in these particular cases. But right now, the facts that are being actually put out by, reliable sources show us beyond a reasonable doubt that Karmelo Anthony is likely guilty of murder. In addition to that, if you take the relative's post at face value, if you believe that's the relative and that's the information and the story that they're going with, that actually provides more of a motive for Karmelo Anthony to commit an even more premeditated murder and makes him even more guilty. Now, of course, the jumping by the two brothers is not backed up by any of the information from the witnesses. We're not hearing anything about the phone being destroyed by any objective third-party source. We're only hearing that from somebody who wasn't there, and I think that's an obvious reason why we should regard that information with less veracity at this moment in time. But I also want to point out something else, and that is related to, of course, the father, who has not only been gracious and obviously very heartbreaking in all his different various interviews, but he's been gracious to the killer. He's been gracious to Karmelo Anthony. He's asked people to stop racializing the situation, even though, again, it is black people racializing the situation to defame his son because his son is white, but he still doesn't want to engage in that, and yet he is consistently attacked, and yet they still go after him. There is never a perfect white victim for these people because, again, they can always fall back on what Amazing Lucas did, which is, it's hilarious that your son is dead.
What does he do? He goes and touches the kid again. And sure enough, this is the ultimate, from what it seems, the FAFO. Like, that's not just being in this country. That's not how we're trained. And this is partly due to post-traumatic slave syndrome, a book that I recommend y'all read.
And of course, post-traumatic slave syndrome. Oh my God, the slavery is so traumatic. What was Karmelo Anthony to do? Function like a normal, rational human being, not murder somebody over a dispute over a seat, sit where his actual school's tent was, move when he's asked? Those are too reasonable. To think about the post-traumatic slave syndrome. Oh my God, what a victim, Karmelo Anthony. Oh, so sad. Oh my God. Innocent Beba Angel, Aladdin, he just stabbed him in order to feed his starving family. Shut up. Honestly and genuinely, shut your faces if you're on this side. If you want to wait for the evidence to come out, if you want to say he's innocent until proven guilty, totally fine with that. If you want to ignore blatant facts and then reimagine new ones, then no, you're scumbag through and through. And the fact that you're doing this solely based on the race and not based on the actions, not based on the content of the character, pretty disgusting for you to do. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. Hopefully I won't have to cover this again, but apparently this is going to be an ongoing story. I want to know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the defenders and the people giving money to Karmelo Anthony. Till next time.